Hi, everybody, and welcome to an incredible special guest today on the Unstoppable Mindset podcast. This is a first, I have to say. This is a first for me to have someone who I'm currently working with, who I honestly admire an incredible amount, to be on the podcast to not only talk about some of the amazing things that they're doing, but also talk a little bit about their journey. So without further ado, I have to introduce the founder and CEO of Fleeting. And also, we will get into this a little bit, the creator of a new course that allows people to understand how they can monetize the trucking industry for themselves and learn and educate themselves and create a life for themselves, no matter where you're at. This is the incredible founder, CEO, amazing friend of mine, everything, all the above, Pierre Laguerre.
Thank you, Keegan. I appreciate it. Thank you for having me. This is an amazing night, and I feel excited, man. Thank you.
I mean, honestly, all I can say is, it's always a blessing when we get a chance to chat, man. It is, and tonight being a little bit different than most. Normally we're chatting it up, talking about goals and all these amazing things that are coming up for you. And tonight we just get to kick back a little bit, and we just get to chat a bit about your journey, and really just help people understand a little bit more about what makes Pierre. So I would love to kick this off by understanding a little bit about your background. Let's catch a few people up who may not know who you are. I would love for them to know a little bit about your background.
Absolutely, yes. And excuse me if I do have a long background, so I'm going to try to minimize it as much as I can. But since we're talking, I guess I'm assuming that it should be okay for us to just flow freely and talk about my background. And before I go into that, and I just want to say thank you as well for everything you've been doing, being a great coach, demonstrating that leadership and everything I've learned, executive coaching. So thank you again for everything that you've done. I think everything you have done helped me realize so far is a reason why I'm still here today and saying, hey, look, how do we build this next system to help people actually find ways to create a better life, right at home, whether it's a situation, wherever you live at, you can do that. So I'm very grateful to be here tonight to talk about that. But also, most importantly, is that my story is something that I never really kind of embraced very early on. I was always kind of ashamed of my story because my story is like a perfect definition of a roller coaster, right? So it's just like, man, there's just so many ups and so many downs. And I think being where I am today have allowed me to understand the real importance of don't get too high on the highs and don't get too lows on the lows. But needless to say, it was pretty much a long journey. But my background for me is born and raised in Haiti. Came here when I was 15 years of age, and I came here with the dream of becoming a neurologist, Keegan. And as a child, I want to say I was one of those bad, smart child. When I say bad, meaning I'll do something and I'll get popped for it and I'm right back doing it again. But I always was an A student, right? So I used to always reason with myself and say, okay, well, I know I just got popped for doing this, right? Why am I urgent to go and do it again? So ever since then, I was really, really amazed on how the brain worked, right? So from then I was like, I really want to study, what is it that causes us to have certain behaviors, certain emotions? So from then, I was very amazed by that. But when I came here in 1997, I believe so, as a matter of fact, September 23rd, 1997, it was pretty much shocking to me in a sense. If you live in a third world country, Keegan, there's one thing I could say is whoever is America's chief marketing officer, they're doing a hell of a job, right? Because you do not see poverty, right, of America when you live in a country like Haiti, right? You wouldn't believe that America has its own sets, again, of poverty, of, certain community, impoverished certain communities. So for me, it was much more like shocking when I came here in 1997 and I landed in Brooklyn and I was like, wait, hold up. This is not what I signed up for. This is not.
Yeah, not everything is sunshine and rainbows.
Exactly. I said, wait, hold up. That's not what I signed up for. That's not the America that I used to see on TV. What happened? So for me, it was like, really shocking. So early on, I quickly realized that one, it was a very dangerous community. I saw it my firsthand experience, seeing, young men getting killed early, through gang violence, seeing young women being sprung out on drugs very early. So for me, again, that exposure to that community quickly had me on my toes thinking, okay, well, what is it that I need to do to escape this community? Becoming a neurologist was out the window because I said, there's no way in hell I'm going to graduate alive to become a neurologist. And I started thinking about, okay, well, how do I escape this community? So I did, when we came over here, it was me, my mother, and my 4 sisters. My father wasn't in my life, so I had to become a man very early in the family.
Yeah.
But, going through high school, growing up in that community, I've learned one thing was, the ability to make something out of nothing, because that's pretty much the community that we were in. But after graduated high school, I said, man, I got to get out of here, because I lost about 6 friends through street violence,
Jeez.
friends getting incarcerated. So, and I felt like, there was this thing always like they said was, if you hang out with 5 millionaires, you're bound to be number 6. But if you hang out with 5 guys that don't know, right from wrong, that's in the street, 9 out of 10, I'm bound to be number 6.
Yeah.
So for me, I started really thinking, okay, well, how do I escape this? And trucking became a thing in my head. I said, you know what? I really like trucks. I love how big they were on the highway, the amount of skill it requires to drive it. So anything that requires a certain level of skill, I was very attracted to it. So trucking was something that I was attracted to. I said, well, maybe I'll drive a truck and never have to come back into this community. And Keegan, to be very honest with you, after I graduated high school, I did go to college, study electrical engineering. Now, that's one thing you'll know, right? Growing up in a Haitian household, if you're not a doctor, a lawyer, or engineer, you're a loser, right? You're nothing else.
It's high stakes. I mean, and that's when there are so many different cultures outside of the U.S. where, and obviously it happens in the U.S. too, but outside of the U.S., there's a lot of people who are in the U.S. who might even sometimes stereotype this, where they look into cultures outside of the U.S. culture, where they understand like, oh, if you are probably from this type of culture, there's a lot of pressure to be a lawyer, a doctor, kind of one of those big, those, I don't know what to exactly call it, but like, it's one of those classical positions, where, like, oh, my son became an accountant for a Big 4 accounting firm. They became a doctor in one of 100 different potential things. They became a lawyer. Right. So like, it's these high net earning, really honorable jobs from a classical perspective. So, and that puts a lot of pressure on somebody.
It absolutely did. It put a lot of pressure on me, because even when I decided to drop out of college to get my CDL, which ended up happening, and my mother was not having it. And then, like I said, she's like, well, what happened? You thought you wanted to be a doctor. I thought that was your thing. Now, how come all of a sudden you want to drive trucks? She said, what happened? You want to be just like your father? You want to be a taxi driver just like him, man? And that hurt but it was also a reality check, right? But one thing I told her, I said, Mom, I'm going to drive trucks, not because I am a truck driver. I said, I'm going to drive trucks just so I can learn on how to run a trucking company eventually. So that for me was always the mindset when I got into trucking. I said, well, I'm going to get my CDL and escape the community. Again, it wasn't just to go out there and be a driver and retire, when I'm 65. It was much more like I had this vision of me owning a fleet of at least 300 trucks. That was like always a big vision to me. So when I decided to get my CDL, again, not only I went to work as a truck driver, but the reality, I went to work as a fleet owner, as a business owner. So that experience being a driver has allowed me the opportunity to be here today. But I'm saying this to say, again, from college, dropping out of college and getting my CDL, my mother wasn't having it. It was, a little tough, but I explained to her, I said, hey, look, my dad is not around, right? I don't see nobody else helping around here. And if you look where we live at right now, there's no guarantee I could make it out here alive, right? There's every day you walk outside of your house, whether you're going to school or you're going to the corner store, there's a possibility that you may not come back. Now, again, it's not because, well, you live in the middle of Afghanistan or Iraq. We're talking about right here in Brooklyn in America.
Yeah, this could be anywhere. I remember just the other day. So I live in between Denver and Colorado Springs, and here in Colorado, and just the other day there were a group of high schoolers that were hit by a drunk driver, and 2 of them died immediately, and the other 2 are in critical condition on life support. And it's so, I mean, to your point, the community doesn't always dictate danger or circumstances, right? Because you could grow up in a pretty rough end of the neighborhood, and it doesn't matter where you're at, and you could come out and you could be in an amazing place. You think of a lot of sports figures, people who came from pretty rough backgrounds who are now able to give back to their community and help change the fabric of some of their community. And then you see, I would consider where I live to be a pretty safe suburban area, but I mean, you have one idiot who decides to drive drunk, and now there are 4 kids who are there's 2 that are gone, and 2 more that will probably soon be gone. So it doesn't matter where you're from. There's that potential for that type of thing to happen. And I have to ask before you continue, when you approached your mom and you said, Mom, I'm going to be a truck driver, not to be a truck driver, but to learn how the trucking industry works because I want to become a business owner. Did that in any way, shape, or form sway her, the way she thought about that you did stuff? Or was she more on the side of, okay, I'll believe it when it happens?
I would say it was much more like, I'll believe it when it happens.
Okay.
But much more like, because again, like growing up even in my household, seeing my mom was really an entrepreneur in her own right? My mother used to be a seamstress, and my stepdad, he used to own a welding business. So I grew up in a home with entrepreneurship, but still you have that generation. It's not, how can I put it? She wasn't born in that generation that would encourage you to go build a business. They would rather, hey, look, go to school, get an education.
Yeah, it wasn't popular like it is today,
Yeah,
right?
correct.
Like, and you have your own children now, and the thing is, as they grow up, you will probably be in the mindset of, if you're really passionate about something, there's probably a way to monetize it. Whereas the generation, for most people, their parent generation was a generation where the amount of jobs available were, I mean, it was maybe 1% of the jobs that are currently available, or at least no one knew that any of these other things could be possibly an opportunity for someone to go explore. I mean, good Lord, you think of like back in like the 90s or 80s, and somebody says, hey, I'm going to make a lot of money by speaking softly into a microphone. And someone would be like, you're an idiot. But nowadays, someone says, I get paid, 6 figures a year doing ASMR. And someone's like, wow, that's amazing. Like, where do you do this? Where do you do that? Right. And so like there's just this huge technological difference that has opened up so many different opportunities, which I think leads into some of the stuff that you're kind of doing now, because now that there are 1,000,001 different ways to be able to take one industry like trucking. You paid your dues to the dirt there. And then you decided at some point, hey, I'm going to take the leap and I am going to bet on myself in this realm. Now there's 1,000,000 different ways that you can obviously cut that up, and whether it's and you've chosen to do a couple of them, right? You can start your own business and start owning your own fleet. You could make a course, you could mentor people, you could do one of 100 different things within that realm. So I want to maybe understand, number one, how many years were you a trucker before you decided, hey, I want to now move into more of the ownership side of this industry rather than being a driver?
Yes. Yeah, great question. I actually drove for 13 years.
Okay.
I drove 14 years, 10 as a company driver and 4 years as an owner operator, when I had owned and operate my own truck. And then I went into business by myself, built a staffing agency, then built a trucking company.
Okay.
We're going to get into and talk about.
Yes. Okay. So 14 years. I mean, that's for most people, you tell anybody who is underneath the age of like 35, right, that you drove, that you were doing that for 14 years, they'd be like, that is a marathon and a half that's an ultra marathon. That's an Uber marathon, to hold any one particular skill set. But obviously you went through it. You learned a ton about the industry. You learned how everything works. You didn't just go into it, wake up, drive, and then, eat, sleep, shower, repeat type of thing. You went into it. You wanted to educate yourself. You had a bigger goal. So when that 14 years really hit, and then you wanted to make that jump, at what point, which I know this is kind of a dumb question because there is no good answer for it. At what point did you feel comfortable enough to be able to say, I'm going to make this leap of faith into this next realm? Or is that still something that, it still is kind of a gray space?
No, to be very honest with you, it was my math professor that
Okay.
actually gave me the courage to first jump in and go out there and do it by myself. And here's why. When I get my CDL, I worked for XPO Logistics for a couple years, holding doubles. Then I went to work for a company called Performance Food Group. With Performance Food Group, I started doing food deliveries to local restaurants, schools, and hospitals. And one route I ended up with was a route in Brooklyn. And I ended up doing food deliveries in the same college that I used to go to, right? And
Wow.
believe it or not, I was somewhat embarrassed and ashamed about it. And people would say, why would you ashamed? Well, I dropped out of college and here I am delivering food product. And I used to always rush in and out of that school when I'm doing deliveries there. And I ran into my professor one day as I'm rushing out. And he shot my name. He said, Pierre, hey, what's going on? And I'm like, oh, God. He said, come in, man. Long time. What's going on? I said, yeah, everything okay? He's like, what's the matter? I said, look, man, he's like, you seem to be in a rush. I was like, look, man, I dropped out of school, you know, now I'm doing food deliveries here. So, I don't want my friends to see me. I don't want even you to
Yeah,
see
your
me.
pride isn't exactly at its highest peak point in that moment.
Absolutely. Yeah. So I'm like, yeah, I don't want to be seen. And he's like, well, why? I said, well, everybody might be doing good. He said, well, Pierre, how much are you making a year? At the time, Lamar, believe it or not, I was doing about 93K a year. And that's something that I didn't know myself with the money that I was making. He was like, well, Pierre, look, he said, 90% of these kids are going to graduate in here and they'll be lucky if they see 93K.
Oh yeah, that's lucky if they would see that at any point over the next decade, maybe even 2 decades. Like that is when you get above, like, what is it, like the 75, 80K mark, you're in probably the top 10% of people in the US in terms of salaries. The average salary, like average income across the US is something like 55, something like that.
Yep.
Yeah, 55. So you're almost doubling the national average of income. And so what did that moment teach you when you had that moment of insight with him that he taught you that?
Well, one thing he taught me was he reminded me of who I was somewhat slightly. He's like, Pierre, he's like, I remember you in class. You've always had this thing for leadership. You've always got this thing, like you have a very acquiring mind. Like, you always want to step up and take control even in group project. He's like, entrepreneurship is for you, man. He's like, hey, look, this is America. He's like, own this. He said, be the best trucker you can be and eventually do what you got to do because I see it in you. So what he did was reinforce what I already kind of knew that I had inside me. But sometimes we all need somebody to remind us that, hey, look, we are greater than what we think that we are sometimes. So I think that was the valuable piece of message I got from that experience.
Yeah. Yeah. And so one of the things that I have to kind of do a little bit of an intro on. So after that point, you decided to obviously get into the entrepreneurship side and building your own business, which, wound up becoming fleeting. One of the things that has stuck with me ever since we first had a conversation, it was really from, a friend of mine who I had been connected with. They were in a group with you and, they said, hey, I'd love for you two guys to have a conversation. And one of the things that I had asked you is, what your goal is, why you're doing any of this stuff. Cause I was just curious. I was like, tell me about what you're doing. Like, what's the ultimate goal here? And the thing that stood out to me so much is you brought up, obviously, growing up in the scenarios that you were faced growing up. You're like, as a kid, especially here in America or Brooklyn and sometimes in any rough neighborhood, when you're, a young, it doesn't matter what descent it doesn't matter, what ethnicity you are, but more often than not, if you're basically from a rough neighborhood and you're not white, then obviously things can seem really tough. And, the opportunities that are presented to you in those situations can be incredibly tough. And you wanted to flip the script a little bit. You wanted to offer people an opportunity. Doesn't matter who they are, what their background is, what ethnicity they are, if they've been incarcerated or not, unjustly or not. You wanted to give them an opportunity, and that opportunity was going to be for them to live the American dream, because you came over and you said this. You came over and it wasn't all sunshine and rainbows. It wasn't the American dream. It was the American marketing that you saw, but in terms of how to actually get there,
Yep.
it can be very difficult. You wanted to open the door for somebody to be able to go and find a way to be able to achieve that. And you wanted to become a facilitator for allowing people to go and change their life. That purpose of being able to give the kid who's on a street corner wondering if they're going to make it out of their neighborhood alive by age 15, 16, hell, if they can even make out of it when they're a full adult at 18 by that time. You wanted to give them a real chance. And that was something that stuck with me so incredibly deeply. And I knew in that moment that you knew your why more than anything else, right? You just so happen, you were this amazing, incredible individual, and you just so happened to be an expert in the trucking industry, and you owned your own business and you were working on a whole bunch of other things. And I have to call that out, because for anybody who obviously is listening to this or knows you, doesn't know you, the thing that I want them to understand is the intention you have behind everything you do is so incredibly genuine. And you are such a, and I say this in the most endearing way, you are such a hardworking blue collar mentality type of person, where you don't see something as this is insurmountable. This is everything you do. Although you're wearing a button-up shirt, is I can roll up my sleeves and I can get dirty, right? At any given moment. The button-up, don't let the button-up shirt fool you, right? So you have this amazing work ethic and amazing heart, and you have been dealt, I mean, we can say this as honestly as we can, you've been dealt some pretty shit hands in a number of different ways throughout your life, and you have continued to persevere through all these different things, which puts you in not only the stratosphere of really rare people from a pure intention perspective, but from a perseverance perspective. I think that's the thing, that those two things, your intention and your ability to persevere, are I mean, they're nothing short of inspiring. Now, obviously, the man who thrives in times of war is unfortunately cursed with not quite being able to find peace. Which, when you're a business owner, it can seem like every day you wake up and there's a new battle waiting for you. And sometimes there is, sometimes there isn't, but sometimes you have no clue how to decipher some of these things. And those are the things that, I mean, they plague everybody who wants to be an entrepreneur. I mean, there's quotes about it from any entrepreneur out there. There was, Elon Musk saying, being an entrepreneur is like staring out into the abyss while eating shards of glass, right? And and so there's all these different ways that you can look at entrepreneurship. Some people see opportunity. Other people who have been an entrepreneur know that it's hard as hell. But you went and you started your own company. Now, you have been featured in magazines. You are a speaker. None of these things happened overnight. Talk to me about kind of that initial phase when you're getting started and you're starting to say, I'm taking this dream of mine, I'm taking this intention I have, and I'm starting to actually put it into play. What was that like for you?
Man, that was, I think you touched on it, right? Because there were so many different moments in my life where I felt like, I was up and then hit rock bottom and then got back up again. But the last time I got up, which was from the 2018 brutal attack that I had with my head, and suffered pretty much 67 staples in my head, and my forehead is not real, which maybe we could get in that story. But I think one thing that did it for me was the fact that I think I was this close to the heaven gates, put it that way, right? That's what we call it. It's like I was there. I felt like God sent me back purposely for this mission to be where I am today. And again, I'm not here to try to, talk about religion or talk about people's faith. I'm speaking about my faith, about my experience, what I went through.
Yeah.
And to be very honest with you, Keegan, is one thing to be in a hospital and your family's preparing funeral arrangements, right? And then a couple of days you back, you say, oh my God, okay, God give me a second chance. And then when you sit back and you realize you do not have that much time left to do the things that we're saying we're gonna do. A lot of us may have the purest intention to say, hey, look, eventually I want to create this charity. Eventually I want to create this school. Eventually I want to create this. But a lot of times we take for granted that those times are not promised. So for me, it was coming out of the hospital, knowing that they was just preparing funeral arrangements for me and my son, to now having a second chance. It was more like, you know what? I'm gonna go with this, and I'm gonna go, like, I don't care if I die trying this, because guess what? I almost died building regular businesses, right? Although they were great businesses, they still had some impact. But now being able to fight with something with impact, where I felt like, okay, well, the success here is not only Pierre, right? The success here is communities, generations after generation. So it much felt like it was proud to go to war, put it that way. It was pretty much, yes, I feel damn good putting on this armor and go fight.
Right. And you temper that armor every single day when you go out. And I mean, yeah, and honestly, the trials and tribulations that you've been through, 2018 and in 2020, right? Like in the pandemic and all these different things. Like you have absolutely been through the ringer, not only you, but your son. And it is a lot for someone's heart to handle. Let alone just the general headspace of logically trying to process all that stuff too. What do you think? I mean, and I think this has a lot to do with, how real your faith is. Now, obviously, as a man of faith myself, and I think for anybody listening, like faith is just a belief in something larger than yourself that can't fail, whether you think that's God, whether you think that's the universe around you, whether you think that's whether you think it's nothing, right? It's the belief that there's something larger than you at play, and the belief that whatever that larger thing is can't be flawed. Because if you believe in something that is flawed, then eventually you're going to be disappointed. But when you have true and real faith, it is the belief in something that has perfect intention and is putting you in a position where you're exactly supposed to be. It can be very difficult with everything that you've been through. I mean, you've probably felt like your faith has been challenged a lot. So obviously, and call it leading the witness or whatever, but I have a feeling that your faith is really the thing that has pushed you through everything that you have been through. But I wanted to ask you, like, going through all that stuff, that's more than what most human beings could probably bear in a lifetime. What got you through it?
Wow. So I think this is the part where I go through the entire story and probably understand of what got me through it. Is number one is knowing where I came from. Number one. One thing I realized is that living in Haiti and living in America is totally two different places. I mean, we all would know that, right? However, when I realized the opportunity that I have here in America compared to the opportunity that I had living in Haiti, man, I realized that I wasn't taking full advantage of what was around me, right? So that was the number one thing. But I think it was also the promise that I made to my mom, the fear of being mediocre, right? The fear of just being a truck driver. That was one thing. So that was a bet that I had kind of like, with myself and her, because it was like, no. And those words that she said really stuck with me. Say, oh, you're going to be a taxi driver just like your dad. Now, I don't think she meant that to really hurt my feelings or to kill my dreams, right? I think she wanted more, but that's just her way of communicating that. So when you take those things and you put them together, and then now you take my personal story, right? As far as when I became an owner operator, got my own truck, and realized very early that the industry was missing something. And I said, okay, well, I have to do something. I have to learn more. I applied myself, went to Wagner College for a year, learned supply chain logistics, still came back and felt like, okay, well, this wasn't enough. I need to learn more. Went and learned how to become a freight broker. Before I even started a freight broker business, it was so annoying to realize how brokers or freight brokers take advantage of truckers' ignorance in this industry, right? And again, this is not to vilify all freight brokers. There's bad drivers, there's bad brokers, there's bad shippers, there's bad truck companies. That's just the reality it is. And I quickly said, okay, well, what is it that I can do? But before I was able to build anything after doing all these studies and learning, I got into a car accident, Keegan, with my own personal car. And I was out of work for 11 months. My personal car had 3 payments left. The car got repo. My truck eventually ended up getting repo 8 months later. I'm going through a divorce. When I became an owner operator, I left Brooklyn and moved to suburban New Jersey. I moved to West Orange, New Jersey, pretty much doing well for myself, married, my children. Again, at the time, my daughter was 5, and it felt good. I was a truck driver again. I was making, again, more money than most. When I became an owner operator, I was making what? After I became an owner operator, I never made no less than $140,000 a year, right? So for me, it was just like living from that. And then I got into the accident, going through the divorce. I watched everything hit rock bottom again. And I had to leave Jersey because of my divorce. I found myself right back in Brooklyn in the same community that I had left. This is where faith for me really started building. And what's interesting about faith was, as quick as I gained faith, and I realized how easy it was for me to also lose faith. But I serve an awesome God, but I was able to get my faith restored, and here's why. When I moved back to Brooklyn, I read a simple book, just a very small book called What the CEO Wants You to Know, right? And that little book changed my entire perception around business. It was, my main takeaway was volume and profit margin. And I started thinking, okay, well, what is it that I can do to make some money? I wasn't creative enough to make anything happen. And I started walking everywhere because my car got repo. But I started seeing all the windows from the, beauty salons, restaurants, and barbershop. And I started doing the same math in my head. I said, well, if I could charge each store $10 per glass, I said, if I get 100 stores, I could make $1,000 a week. And before you know it, I could get back on my feet. So I went and told a friend about it. I said, hey, man, I'm thinking about starting a window cleaning business. That friend looked at me and laughed. He said, man, I said, why you laughing? He's like, look, man, people are going to think you a crackhead. I said, why you say that? He said, well, look around. There's nothing but crackheads cleaning windows, right? I said, wow, you do have a point. But I said, well, look, right now, look how clean we are. We barely can afford anything to eat. I said, I'd rather look like a crackhead, but have some money in my pocket where I could take care of my child instead of looking this clean and I have $1 and have $0 in my pocket. He's like, wow, that is a good point. So he said, well, if you get 50 stores, I'll do it with you. I take him on that bet, woke up the next morning and solicited the entire Brooklyn, New York, knocking on doors. Hi, my name is Pierre. We have a service that specializes in glass cleaning. We'll do it for X, Y, and Z. Don't mind you, we didn't even have the business yet, but here I am knocking on doors. That same day, I had about 72 stores that agreed for me to clean their glass. Went home, borrowed $60 from $80 from my little sister, went to Home Depot, got me some bucket and got me some spingies, and I was off to the races, started cleaning windows. Now, same thing. I said, man, should I really do this? Like I said, yes, my peers really gonna think I am on drugs. The same thought process that was going through my head when I ran into my professor, right? And told me that, hey, Pierre, this is America, be the best trucker you can be. And I didn't want to be seen. It was the same thing happening through the window. But I started thinking, I was like, wait, hold up. Last time I was ashamed of a situation, it got me real far because once I spoke to my professor and I decided to become an owner operator, now I only learned to become an owner operator. I learned so much things about businesses. I learned so much things about who are the key target audience are, who the people are, how do this entire supply chain logistics thing work. So I learned a lot by even saying, okay, well, let me take that leap of faith or that step. So when that same thought process came into my head and said, man, this is really, I should be ashamed of myself. I'm out here cleaning glass. I thought about the same thing. I said, you know what I said? I said, you know what? Maybe this is God. Maybe this is God showing me a way to humble myself. This is exactly what I said to myself. So I said, you know what? I'm just going to do it. I know I'm ashamed, but right now, my daughter can't eat if I don't work. I can't pay my rent. I have literally, I'm talking about back to square one, zero.
Yeah.
And believe it or not, in 3 months, man, we made $60,000 cleaning windows. Right now, we turned this thing into a whole franchise. We had all the Metro PCS stores, the 7-Eleven, we had some banks. And guess what I did? I started creating routes and giving job opportunities to younger guys in that same community, especially the young ones I felt like that was at risk. And really started really growing. Now, when I was cleaning the windows, I said, no, I'm not going back to trucking. I want to turn this into a multi-million-dollar business. I was lying. Again, the minute we started making money, trucking started calling me again. Trucking was calling me. It was calling, and I couldn't stay away. And I said to myself, I said, well, what if I just go back to trucking and apply the same principles that I've applied from the window cleaning business to trucking? I said, well, why don't I start a staffing agency where I'm gonna go and get the drivers, groom them, and then outsource them back to trucking companies that's desperately in need of drivers. How would that work? Because as a driver myself, I realized how trucking companies was always struggling to find good, talented drivers, and drivers was always struggling to find good carriers. So I said, well, what if I start a business and again, groom the drivers and pay them? How would that work? To be very honest with you, Keegan, again, I took the same approach of building a window business, went to trucking companies' doors, knocking on their doors and introducing my service. And you'd be surprised the contracts that I had. Contract with Driscoll Food, DHL, FedEx, UPS, Arizona Iced Tea, and everybody still to this is like, well, how can a driver like you end up doing business with those companies? Well, guess what? It was the driver skill. It was the driver knowledge that I know that became my greatest weapon that I've used to get this contract. Because when I went to speak to these people about business, I didn't go and speak to them about my business or how big it could be or no. I went to speak to them about myself, about what I've learned as a driver and what it is that I can do to bring better drivers into their doors. Yep. And again, by the grace of God, grew that company to 2.5 million in revenue under 18 months.
Man, I have a question. Well, and number one, I have a lot of questions, right? Like, and I'm sure anybody listening to this probably has a ton of questions because it seems like everything you get involved with starts as this humble idea, and then you find a way to turn it into, I mean, what I can only describe as some form of like a conglomerate of like a large company that just scales. And not everybody can do that. What do you think is the number one thing that causes somebody to go from, hey, I'm going to go from a window washing business to I have a window washing enterprise, or I want to drive a truck versus I own a trucking enterprise in some way, shape, or form? What is the number one thing that causes somebody to be able to go from trading, like time for money to actually scaling to something greater than that?
Oh man, that's a good question. So there's two ways I would say, two answers for that. Number one is for sure exposure. Being exposed to seeing what true entrepreneurship look like. Being exposed to realize, oh, who owns this company, right? Who is this person's age? How old is this person? To me, I was exposed to those things very early because again, I was a nosy kid. I wanted to know everything and I asked a lot of questions. Yeah. So I think that exposure was definitely one thing that helped me to see myself outside of just being Pierre. It was always seeing myself outside like, okay, well, the last company I worked with, the first trucking company I worked with, which is XPO Logistics, one of my supervisor or regional manager at the time, his name was Lou Decker. Right. And through Lou Decker, I remember the CEO of I can't remember the name of the CEO of the company at the time, but the CEO of that company was making $5 million a year. One thing I didn't know, a CEO don't have to be the owner of the company. I always thought the CEO was the person that started and owned the company. So I used to always look up to these guys, the CEO of these trucking companies, and always say to myself, why I can't be a CEO just like them? Why I can't own a trucking company with 500 trucks? I said, if they can do it, I can do it. And I've always said, I said, look, we breathe the same air. We may not have the same opportunity. We may not have the same upbringing. We may not grew up on the same block, but I feel like we still have the same opportunity to go after. As much as he believed in himself to go after it, I believed in myself to go after it. So I think those were the things that really allowed me to not just see myself just as a truck driver. It was always beyond just a truck driver.
Okay, so I hear a couple different things there. So the first one is curiosity, right? You said you were a pretty nosy kid. And being curious about something. And starting with the question, I wonder what, and then fill in the blank, or I wonder if, right? And there's everybody who says, oh, that would be nice. I want, that'd be cool to do this or that, or do all these other things. They see something, whatever. And there's always that curiosity, but then that's where a lot of people actually get stopped. They get curious, but then there's no follow through. And that's when you talked about the second thing, which is the exposure. Actually stepping into practicing something, actually going after something and putting it into play and realizing it may not work, but you're getting exposure to something. Like, exposure has nothing to do with being successful at something. Exposure is pure discovery and being able to say, I am just going to expose myself to this scenario. I'm going to get my hands dirty with it and I'm going to see what happens. That's where people get probably tripped up the most, is they get curious and then they start thinking about actually exposure with it, and they think, oh, well, what if I fail? And then they stop and they don't ever follow through with it. When you lose the fear of failure and you just embrace gaining experience, you go leaps and bounds further than those who only remain curious, right? And then the final part of that, which you talked about, is your belief system, changing your conditions, right? There, you said, I used to believe that if you're CEO, you have to own stuff, like you have to be the owner or something. And then you're like, oh, I don't have to be, like, where's this? Right. And then you start thinking, where did I learn this? Where was that condition? And everybody has some type of belief system. And if you don't think that you do, I mean, I'm sorry to say, but your parents were your first belief system. They tell you these are right. We talked about this earlier. In some cultures, you go and be a lawyer or a doctor, right? That's the belief system. You go, and those are the only two jobs that are available to you. Even though in today's day and age, there's like a billion different jobs that you can go and do. And even if you want to be a lawyer or a doctor, you could go and you could do it on YouTube. You could be a TikTok doctor, right? Like those are real things. People get paid to do that stuff. So that belief system, being able to be okay with understanding that you may have to completely replace how you've been conditioned. Now that's easier said than done, because the process of that can be very difficult, and you're kind of doing it forever, because what serves you right now may not serve you in the future. So you have to get comfortable with kind of this shedding away or burning off of kind of this old belief system in order to make room for something new, which we deal with all the time. It's why people work with coaches. It's why people have mentors. It's why people have anybody who's trying to help them move forward in life. Usually one of the first things that they start to work on is like, okay, so tell me what you believe about this. Someone will say, well, I believe that somebody like me isn't meant to do this. And all it sometimes takes is for one person to be like, bullshit, and here's why. And then be able to say, you could go and do this. Here is the step-by-step process of how you could go and do that. And then someone says, oh, wow, I never really thought of it that way. And it's like, okay, now we can make some progress here, which kind of leads into, this course, right? There are a lot of people out there. And I think we're going to spend a good amount of time on this course, because anybody who, I think the thing that I love so much about you is you have exposed yourself to so many different aspects of life: entrepreneurship, success, failure, discovery, reaching as high as you can, falling, hitting rock bottom, learning to pick yourself back up, and getting the shit kicked out of you, literally and figuratively, in every single way possible, in learning how to persevere. Anybody could probably sit here and see some part of themselves in you. And that's what I think makes you such an inspiring individual, is because of how real and raw and relatable you are as a human being. Now, obviously, there are some things where some people can relate with a small piece of you because you've been through so much that there's probably a very rare few amount of people who can really relate to everything you have ever been through. But there is a piece of you that everybody could probably connect with. And for those people out there who are thinking about, okay, I want to change something, and just like you have faced a number of times, you want to either pick yourself back up, or you want to learn how to excel in certain areas of your life. You have proven that it doesn't matter what you do. It just matters that you do, right? So like you could go into window washing, and it's not about the windows. I promise you, it's not about it. It's about understanding how to provide value in one way, shape, or another when there is a need, or understanding how to help somebody see a need that you obviously provide value to, right? Someone could say, my windows are fine. And then it's like the person who you're competing with has a great storefront. And don't you think that people would find it more welcoming to go into a place that has a good, clean exterior that they feel comfortable walking into versus one that is not that. And someone would say, well, I think you're right. And then being able to provide value. So
My sales pitch too, by the way.
it's a good one. It's a rinse and repeat for almost anything.
Absolutely.
And so there are people out there who are probably telling themselves, I want to either change something or be better at something and excel at something. And there is nothing better to try and test the waters with than one of the most American like staples or in backbones of the of everything, right? Every single piece of really every part of the entire United States infrastructure touches trucking. And that's why, I mean, people are thinking, why is lumber cost so high? It's drivers. It's not that we're running out of trees. I promise you that much. It's because there is a driver shortage. There's a trucking shortage. Truckers dictate the price of so many different things. Now, obviously, the better skilled drivers and the more trucks that are available, prices of certain things can go down, things can be more fluid, logistics can be better and better. And you are offering, now when I say offering, we've talked about this for just about a whole year. So this has been a long time coming, and you are now exposing basically everything. You are saying, I am putting all of my expertise, all of my skills, all of my knowledge into a course for people to now be able to learn from you, move chapters ahead in that book, and be able to learn how to become their own really writers of their future. So, I mean, first and foremost, what made you really want to start a course? Like, what was the inspiration for it when you said, I'm going to do a course? Like, what was that insight moment? What was that decision point?
And before I answer that question, Lamar, thank you again, because there's a way you ask certain questions. You make me like your questions make me just realize something. It's like everything I've started, it was some type of pain attached to it. Right? So you saying, hey, why did I decide to launch the course? So remember, I was telling you again from my injury, I was brutally attacked from an attempt carjacking robbery in 2018. And that left me for dead. Like I said, my family didn't know if I was gonna make it. At the same time, my son that was born in 2017, he was born with Down syndrome, and he was also going through multiple open heart surgery. So we both ended up in the hospital around the same time. I'm in Kings County, and my son is in Downstate, and we're both fighting for our lives. And what really did it for me, I said, wow, if I said that I didn't feel the need to pick up a gun myself to retaliate, I'll be lying. If I said I didn't feel the need to pick up a knife or go or hurt those people that hurt me, I'll be lying. But it was also through that same pain that I said, okay, well, if I go out there, pick up a knife or a gun and retaliate, what am I going to solve? I said, one, I run the risk of getting killed myself. Two, I run the risk of being incarcerated for the rest of my life, right? Three, I'm going to go out there and hurt somebody else's child, although I'm in pain. But I said, well, if I do that or something happened to me, now my children are going to run the risk of growing up without a father in their life. And before you know it, boom, that cycle continues, right? Yeah. And I said, you know what? I did not want to be that same young Black man that keep perpetrating that same vicious cycle of violence within our communities. And I said, you know what? They have got to stop with me. I said, what if this young brother would have came to me and said, hey, man, this is a nice car. This is a nice watch. What do you do for a living? 9 out of 10, I would have told him I own a trucking company. I can show you how to get a CDL. I can show you how to become a driver. I can show you how to own your own trucking company. But I realized that I grew up in a community where people don't know how to do those things because, again, of how we brought up. Instead of coming to me and asking me that question, a lot of those communities, yeah, they would rather kill you and take what you have before they ask. And at the same time, America is short 1 million truck drivers. So this is where, again, it didn't make sense to me. I find it appalling that we are short 1 million truck drivers. Trucking is the only industry still left today that you can get in without a diploma, without a college education, and still start at least 50K a year. With our company, you starting with 90K a year. In 2 years, if you decide to become an owner operator where you own your own truck, again, you could make up to $500,000 a year gross revenue as a truck driver. The only, again, industry left that you can do that. So I find that appalling. I said, no way. I said, how can America short 1 million truck drivers? Meanwhile, these young men, these young women looking for opportunities, they don't know which way to turn. And at the same token, 600,000 formerly incarcerated men and women are free annually into our street. and there's no ecosystem that's really helping them with housing, helping them with employment. And again, our industry is short 1 million truck drivers, and people fail to realize 74% of everything we touch is moved by truck. If truckers decide to stop driving for 3 days, this country will be covered in waste in 4 days. We'll run out of a clean water supply. It'll be a complete anarchy. So for me, it was like, okay, well, how can I bridge that gap? So when I was in a hospital, when I went through that pain and I lost my faith, which I didn't tell you the part of the story, maybe we'll talk about it another day. I lost my faith the night before I got into the hospital because my mother was coming into town and I was rushing to the hospital for the emergency bleeding for my son. And she said, son, don't worry. God is not putting too much on your plate that you can't handle. And I said, mother, please don't tell me nothing about God. I said, who the hell is he? I said, what God would allow me and my son to go through this? I said, for all I care, he can send somebody to just blow my head open and take me out my misery. Keegan, I said this at 8 p.m. by 1 in the morning. That's exactly where I was at, in a hospital with my head open. So my experience, I'm not bitter about it. I looked at it as a way of God opening up my eyes to realize, okay, there's much more to you. So that's when I made a promise to him. I say, Father, if you allow me to get at this hospital alive and I'm not on a wheelchair and I'm not crippled and, I'm not just a vegetable, I would not only build another trucking company and add technology to solve the supply chain logistic issues, but I want to create an ecosystem where I could really teach, train, and empower young men and young women how to become successful entrepreneurs in trucking. And this is why I'm launching Pierre's Academy. Freedom was a promise to God, and Pierre's Academy is a promise to God because those promises, I believe, is what got me out of the hospital. And that's my why. This is exactly why Pierre's Academy exists today. One is a promise that I've made to the higher authority. And two, it is something that I'm very passionate about, being able to provide those opportunities, especially for young men that look like me in those communities, Lamar. Again, trucking took me from that same community and made millions of dollars, and I believe it can do so for millions of others. And I believe I am the right person to teach, not because I've done it, but simply because I've had a long life of, up and down failures and faith, losing my faith and getting it back. And what that showed me is I can actually guide a new entrepreneur onto their journey because I've been there. I may not know it all, but I know how to deal with certain challenges. I know how to really deal with certain emotions because I've done it so many times. And even me, look, I'm still using help, right? Because I never feel like I'm a master at that because I always feel like it's always going to be a continuing lesson learning. And I think that's what I want to bring to my student, the people that's looking to become entrepreneurs, because entrepreneurship is not, hey, let me take this course and then I'm going to make a boatload of money tomorrow. No, I want them to understand the importance of their why, and I want them to understand the importance of adding value to a very outdated industry. So that's why I'm launching Pierre's Academy.
I love it. I love it. And entrepreneurship has nothing to do with trying to go out on your own. It has everything to do with embracing the fact that you don't know everything, but you know that you want to go and create something. And then at that point, it's how do you surround yourself with people who can help you achieve whatever your vision is and help you get the information to be able to go and do that. So, because you think about anybody who is a passionate baker or a passionate marketer or content creator, or one of a million things. If you have a passion, then chances are you know that one thing really well and you have a pretty good intention about it, but there is a whole slew of items that you have no idea about, or how they work, how they operate, and a number of different things. And with that said, going into this, the barrier to entry is incredibly low, right? You are coming into this and like you said, the credentialing that you need to get started in this is almost none, right? Just don't come in and be an insane human being. Come in it with a great intention of, I want to create something for myself. The information will be provided to you. And if it means you are using this as a stepping stone, if this means that you are using this to embrace your sense of independence, if this is you coming in and wanting to be a provider, I mean, and we share this as men and as fathers, your sense of responsibility to your kids, to your family. It doesn't matter if you are the breadwinner or not, you feel it, right? It's a part of kind of our cultural DNA as men nowadays. And it always has been, where there is this pull to say, I can, and I will, and I must. And that's the last one's the most powerful one. I must, right? Because there's nothing worse than your kid ever saying they do or don't want something and you can't support it. And mainly I started to learn that when I had a daughter, which is my second kid. The moment she would even look at something, I was like, you can have it. And I was like, I'm in trouble. I'm in a lot of trouble here. And obviously, and what it does is it and this is any parent really, you always want to be in a position where you can give your kids, your family, the people close to you, you want to give them something. Now, obviously I had a moment of insight when I moved over 50 tons of material to build a backyard for my family. I realized, and I did it all by hand, pretty much by myself with the help of a couple people every once in a while. I learned when I was done and my kids they were running around, they're having a good time. I learned really my meaning as a man, which is to build for others to be able to enjoy, right? To put in the work to build something beautiful that other people can gain value from and gain and happiness and joy and all these other things from. And that for me was a very pure moment. Now, for people who are wanting to learn how to create pure moments in their own life, and give themselves that opportunity, this is such a powerful opportunity for them to be able to go and do so. Now, you've been working on this course, you even were ready and to be able to go, and then you said, no, it's not done yet, I need to put the final touches on this. And so you are now getting ready to release this again. So first off, I would love for you to kind of high level cover the main things that people are going to be learning when they come into this, and go through this course, and when this course officially goes live, is there early registration? How do people start getting involved in this, and what can they expect to get out of it?
Yes. Oh man, absolutely. There's a lot to get in that course. So definitely, I would say pre-sale will go August 21st, and we're definitely gonna go live September 15th. Right. So pre-sale September 21st, August 21st, but of course we'll be live September 15th. Now, what do people will get out of this course? So number one is, I think, is having them have a clear understanding of what this entire supply chain logistic is, number one, right? Because once they start understanding that everything they consume is part of our daily supply chain logistic world, and they start having a better understanding of how the trucking industry works. So I think for me, most important, but the one thing that I want them to understand is who are the major key players in transportation, why they're important, what challenges are they going through every single day, and what tools, what businesses that we can build to make their lives a lot easier. Because by making the trucker's life easier, believe it or not, like we were saying, right? There's no shortage on trees, but there's a shortage of drivers, but we can't find a lumper. But it's the same way. If we can make the driver's life a lot easier, well, guess what? Maybe that 22 or that 23-year-old might say, you know what? I might think about getting a CDL. I may want to become a truck driver, because again, the more drivers we have, the better economy that we have. That's one for sure. Second, I think, is them understanding exactly where the opportunity is at, what type of wealth that they can create for themselves and their family by really taking this thing serious and really adding values. Again, you could be a dispatcher that make $1,000 a week for the rest of your life running a small business, or you could be a dispatcher that make $100,000 a month. Depends on how you want to scale that business and how many people you want to help. So I want people to really understand that this industry, you can make as much money as you want to make at your own pace, right? It's not, there's no rush, there's no pressure. It's not going out of style anytime. It's just like, okay, well, it's running out. It's, most people say trucking is like the new real estate. I will agree to it to a certain degree, because real estate people believe that's one of the best ways you can build wealth in America. And trucking is crazy, it may sound, trucking been around forever, but it was until the pandemic people realized how important trucking is into our world. Because while the entire world stopped, trucking was the only thing moving. So really people didn't have this idea of how to build wealth in trucking. So I think by really showing them exactly what the challenges are, what the opportunities are, and where the key stakeholders are and what challenges that they're having, their own day-to-day challenges, I believe our students will be best equipped, again, not to only build successful businesses, but to add real value and make a difference of an industry that I'm very passionate about. And I want to help them truly understand their passion, because look, their passion may not be dispatching, their passion may not be truck driving, their passion may not be nothing dealing with trucks or load, but their passion might be, okay, well, how can I make somebody's life a lot easier? Well, you become a dispatcher.
Yeah. And like we were saying before, like this may, like going into this industry, when people, whether you're struggling, whether you're in discovery mode and you're trying to get exposure, whether, you're actually doing really well and you want to create a new revenue stream, like this is such a flexible industry. And, it's also a lot safer than saying, oh, I've hit rock bottom, I'm going to go ahead and join the military. A lot safer than that. And so, and obviously, it can scale with you. You're not being demanded to do a certain amount or anything like that. Like you really get to call your own shots. So, the barrier to entry is incredibly low. And obviously, if people listening haven't already put their finger on this yet, Pierre's the instructor, right? Like he's incredibly talented with all of this. He knows an incredible amount of information about this. He's been in this industry for an incredibly long time. And the thing is, yes, he has the expertise in the ins and outs of this industry as a whole. But the thing that's most impressive about Pierre is his ability to think differently about the industry, no matter what it is, right? You can think about washing windows. You could think about trucking. You could think about anything. I could throw anything out there. And Pierre sees things differently. And so that is one of the biggest skills that you will start to get when you go through this course, is the ability to start seeing something differently and being able to change the way that you have been conditioned to think about certain opportunities that are out there, or really sometimes a lack thereof opportunities, to be able to start seeing more and more items being valid for you to be able to chase after in order to have whether it's a better life, better circumstance, give you time to be able to figure out what you want to do. That's one of the most impressive soft skills that you will probably learn when going through this course. Now, I want to ask this for anybody who probably has any frequently asked questions. How long is the course?
Course, so is something, the way I have this set up is pretty much is going to be, I mean, if you look at all the content, you could go through the course, it's probably going to be about 7 hours of content. But the way I have it break down is actually a 6-week program. It's not just, hey, look, let me buy it, because the first week I want to show you exactly how to actually start your own LLC, right? Pretty much how to obtain your EIN number, how to get a, your pretty much open your bank account, open your business account, how to set up your, your back office for, when you're ready to start your dispatching company. So again, I didn't want it to just be a traditional course where it's like, hey, here's the additional information. It's going to be a 7 weeks training. So when you purchase the course, you have to follow every week. There's a module that you have to do till the finish. And by the time I'm finished with you, again, not only have you taken a course, you already know how to, you'll have your own business in your hand and ready to start making money.
There aren't many courses out there who say, hey, welcome to the course. We're going to start your first business. And not only just your first business, but you're going to learn exactly from a step-by-step process on how to go and make money immediately. Now, obviously, if somebody wanted to work with fleeting afterwards, they're more than welcome to be able to do so and be in contact with you in your company. If they want to do their own thing, they're more than capable of being able to do so. There's opportunity in all these different things. Also,
saying that, and that's one of the biggest value I believe that I bring as an instructor as well. Because a lot of times you'll find instructors selling, how to go build this business, but they're not running the business themselves. They've never done the business themselves. They're just selling you on how to go and build this business. So I think the fact that I'm currently still a CEO of a company in logistics, I'm doing it as I'm teaching them. I think it's one of the biggest value they get from me, because it's not just somebody selling you information. I'm showing you exactly my blueprint on how I got to where I am today.
Yes, this is not only how to be able to earn more money, but this is also everything you wish you would have learned in business class. How do I start a business? How do I set up my back office? How do I get things running? And I mean, the only thing that you're missing from this, and you could turn it into a whole different course, is how to file your own personal taxes. And then you would cover everything that we wish we would have learned in
Man,
business class.
I may add that as a bonus. I may add that
Bonus course coming soon. How
Yes.
to file your own taxes and start your own company. Oh my gosh, that'd be beautiful in itself. But Pierre, outside of the course, right? The course is impressive in itself. I think if anybody has learned anything from this conversation, it's how impressive you are as a human being, and the energy you bring to the table is infectious. You're an amazing individual. I call myself incredibly lucky that you and I cross paths and we get to do what we get to do together. And if there are people who want to get in touch with you, whether it's to ask questions, whether it's to just follow you and see what you're up to and just be inspired by you, or if they're looking for potentially a mentor or anything like that, what are different ways that people can do that?
Yes, great question. So definitely there's several ways people can reach out. I'm on LinkedIn as Pierre Laguerre, Pierre, and Laguerre, Laguerre. And it's actually the same name across all social media, right? Whether it's my Twitter,
That's rare.
Facebook, right? The only thing is on Instagram and Facebook, you just may have to add a 5. I'm sorry, Instagram and Twitter, you may have to add a 5, but that's pretty much my name all across on social media. Also, if you want to get real direct, where it's like, okay, hey, look, I'm looking for mentorship, or I'm looking to really get part of Pierre's Academy, you can actually follow our Pierre's Academy page on IG as well, and you can send a message to us, and our team will get to you and set up a call and get you part of our mentorship program.
Beautiful. And is there any other way rather than because there's Instagram, obviously you can follow that page. Is there another way in which they can go and find out more information about the course?
Yes, so that would be on www.piersacademy.com. But the reason I want to say that because we are still working on that site, but that's going to be where it's going to be on www.piersacademy.com.
Okay, perfect.
Pierre's Academy.
Go check out, obviously, LinkedIn, connect with them there. Go and find him on Instagram. Pierre is very active. I can't tell you how many times, and Pierre's on Eastern time. First off, I have to preface this. He's on Eastern time, and it will be like 10, 11 o'clock at night. And this man will be going live for like people in the West Coast doing an education session on a whiteboard. So yes, when it comes to somebody walking the talk, Pierre he's all in. He is here just to serve other people and do very, very meaningful things and fulfilling things for him. And obviously, when other people are able to be successful, it helps Pierre not only continue to build this company, which his company just provides opportunities to people. It's very rare to find a company that legitimately, as it grows, all it does is as it grows, it doesn't like, yeah, the people in the company benefit, but all it does is just massively open up way more opportunities for other people, whether they're truck drivers, whether they're people who want to get involved with your company in non-trucking type of aspects. Really, it's just as this thing scales, it's just pure opportunity for other people because you have built this to be bigger than you. And so it's not about you, it's about helping other people, which is a very rare thing to find in a human being. But Pierre, this has been amazing. I will make sure I link your LinkedIn, your Instagram, all that other stuff for Fleeting, for Pierre's Academy, for your own personal stuff, so people can get in touch with you. But I did want to take a moment to just let you have a moment. And for anybody who's listening, anybody who is maybe struggling right now, maybe they stumbled upon this by happenstance. And I think that everything happens for a reason. You talked about that, right? Everything has a purpose, has a reason behind it. If there's one thing that someone who may be struggling right now, trying to work through something in their life, coming from someone who has been there, done that a number of different times, what words of wisdom would you leave for them out of this conversation?
Man, and I'm going to leave the word of wisdom that I live by myself. And it's this thing that I always say is the best thing ever invented to mankind is another 24 hours, right? With another 24 hours, we can change our perception, We can change our surrounding, we can change our biology, and eventually change our reality. So anyone that's listening right now, where you are right now is not your final destination. And what you're going through does not determine who you are. So I would say, embrace it. I know it sounds very cliche when people say, yeah, just enjoy the process until their ass is going through the process. But for somebody like me that have been through the process, that have been through the fire, there's one thing I could tell you for sure. Going through the process does not make you weak. Going through the process does not make you less than anybody. To be very honest with you, going through the process it should make you feel like you are a chosen one. Heavy is the head that wear the crown. So embrace everything that come your way, because again, at the end of the day, it's not gonna break you. And I promise you, it's gonna make you a much better person. And the people that might be on the brink of suicidal right now, you can change. You can be better. You can change your entire world, and you can change again your reality. All you have to do is believe in yourself. Believe that you will, and it can. And I lead by faith. Faith, again, is what really keeps me going. Again, man, I don't know how much more I can say this to y'all. I don't want to sound too cliche, but when you believe in something, I want you to hold on to that for dear life. I don't care what storm it is. I don't care what the neighbors say. I don't care what Keegan say. That thing that you believe on, hold on to it and take it there with you, because you may never know. Because it may not be that thing that you believe on that's going to get you where you're going, but it's the process, it's a journey of that thing that you hold on, the people that you're going to meet, the experience that you're going to have that's going to allow you to see the world from a different lens. And that makes all the difference in the world. So just embrace everything you're going through right now and come out on top. Like they say, if you're going through hell, don't drag your feet through hell. Run through that sucker and come out on top as a winner.
I love it. I absolutely love it. Yeah, I'm like sweating now because I'm pretty proud of Pierre, I love you to death, man. I am so excited for the journey ahead, for you, for this course, for people who are going to take it, for what you and I are going to do together, and just being a part of your journey. It's a blessing. I appreciate you. Thank you so much for being on here. And like I said, anybody who wants to be in touch with Pierre, find him on LinkedIn, find him on Instagram, Pierre's Academy as well. Pre-registration opens up here soon on August 21st. And then September, 15th? The course is open. So go pre-register for that right now. Go get in touch on Pierre's Academy on Instagram to learn more about it and pre-register for that. And go make a decision and just go get yourself some exposure, potentially change your life. Pierre, thank you for being here, man. I appreciate you.
Again, appreciate you again. Thank you for this opportunity, man. See you again on the next life, because I know what's about to happen right now. I'm excited for it. This is the next chapter of my life. So see you in the next chapter.
Yes, sir. Just getting started.
Let's get started.